Good morning, and welcome to the Power of Restorative Justice Practices to Support Students and Families in School and Home. We are really excited to have Laura Grant and Chris Sang here with us today. I will now turn it out to them. Thank you, guys.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. We are so excited to be with you this morning. Chris and I were just kind of touching base over the last few days that this is our first webinar. And so we're just really excited to be engaging with you in this format. We're used to talking in front of people live in workshops and different presentations, but we're just very, very excited for those of you who are here with us live, and then for those of you who will watch the recording and still get the content that way. So we wanted to do some quick introductions. I'll introduce myself first and then I'll pass it over to Chris. So, my name is Anna Laura Grant. I am the Restorative Justice Specialist too here at FCPS. I have been in this role for just over a year, and I come from being in the classroom as a teacher for 12 years, primarily in DC, where I was working at a school where I also started and created a conflict resolution, peer mediation, and restorative justice program and was running that program for several years. After that job, I moved to the Office of Attorney General in Washington, D.C., where I was a restorative justice facilitator for young people committing felony level violent crimes and bringing them together with the victims of those crimes for what we in Fairfax County call a Tier 3 restorative circle, but a circle where the participants come together to talk about what happened, how it's impacted them, and how we can together come and try to make things right and find a way to have healing and move forward. So all of the kind of more dangerous, scary things that you see young people doing that reaches the local news, like the armed carjackings, the armed robberies, group assaults on the metro, that type of thing, those are the young people we were working with. So I've had experience in restorative justice in the school setting, in the legal setting, with kind of day-to-day conflicts of fifth graders who just keep hitting each other with backpacks, to more serious, very violent and scary things taking place within DC. So I'll pass it over to Chris now to introduce himself.
Good morning. My name is Chris Sang. I'm the Restorative Justice Specialist 1, and this is the beginning of my third year in this position supporting restorative justice practices in FCPS. And prior to this position, I was an elementary principal in Prince William County for 5 years at a Title I school. And we implemented a lot of these restorative justice practices that we'll talk about today, as well as the ones we'll speak about on December 19th. And we really were able to improve the school climate and culture, increase family engagement, and just make students' voices heard. And prior to that, I was a middle school humanities and English teacher for 10 years in Boston, as well as an assistant principal and instructional coach in Massachusetts. So I just have a wide range of implementing restorative justice practices from the classroom level to the school level, and now the district level as well. So welcome. We're really glad to be here with you today.
All right, thanks, Chris. Oop, went the wrong way. So here's some objectives for us this morning. We really want to give an overview of restorative justice practices in FCPS, like what the broad spectrum of our program is. And then spend some time developing an understanding of the restorative justice mindset and really core beliefs and values to the restorative justice process in all the different aspects. We'll also spend time learning about the implementation and benefits of what we call Tier 1 community building circles. These are circles that take place in classrooms. We'll spend some time learning about Tier 2 circles. These are circles that are for small groups of students that have some kind of shared experience to support them and connect them more to each other in the school community. And we'll look at what that means more specifically in a little bit as well. And then we'll close with sharing some restorative practices that you can actually engage in at home with your families, your partners, your roommates, whoever it is that you live and kind of spend your life with. how you can embody some of these practices in a really practical way at your homes. So we're going to start with a quick poll, and I think Nadia is going to help us. Nadia or Chris, Chris, thank you, implement the poll. We just wanted to know, for those of you who are here live, if you could answer, how much knowledge and understanding do you have about what restorative justice practices are? How much knowledge and understanding do you have about what restorative justice practices are available in FCPS? And how much knowledge do you have about how to implement a restorative justice circle at home? So there's no right or wrong answer here. We just love to see kind of where you are as we start our time together today. Thank you for all those interacting and giving your responses in the poll. We'll just wait a few more minutes or a few more seconds. And yes, Angie, there is a recording, so don't worry. This is being recorded and all folks who registered will get a link. All right. Okay, so almost everyone who's here has voted. And it looks like we have a mix of some knowledge, maybe not really much knowledge. It looks like one person here is really kind of knows a lot about restorative justice practices, which is great. Then again, a mix of knowledge in terms of how we understand how these practices are implemented in FCPS. And ooh, not a lot of knowledge about how to do this at home. So excellent. Hopefully you'll walk away with some real practical things that you can do with your families as well. Um, okay. Oh, okay. So we invite you to think to yourself again as we get started with this and really what and how restorative justice practices can support you and your children or the students that you have who attend FCPS schools. And so if you want to answer this question in the chat, you're welcome to write an answer. Otherwise, you can just think to yourself, how do I want my child to feel at school and in the classroom? And so I'll give just a few minutes or a few moments in case anyone wants to type an answer. Understood, safe, comfortable, safe and happy. Exactly. Safe and secure. Wow, seeing safe come up a lot. Welcomed. Yes. So thank you so much for the answers that you're sharing. In our work, we often hear, I want my child to have meaningful connections, to be known and valued for their unique characteristics and their uniqueness and who they are as a person, and even to be supported in the unique way that they learn. I want my child to have a space to learn social skills and problem solving skills and how to engage in conflict in a healthy way, for them to feel like they're included and belong, to feel like they're motivated and they actually want to come to school and they want to come to class, and that they're connected to other students and to other adults in the building as well. So another question, and please go ahead and type your answer in the chat. What would make me feel like my child is supported and belongs? So what would be things that maybe teachers do or just general ways that would make you feel like your child is supported and belongs in the school? Excellent. Healthy communication with staff when there are concerns definitely makes sense. They have relationships, yes, with other students, maybe with adults in the building too. Ooh, they have by their attitude when they're returning home, how they talk about their school day, having a mentor or someone to turn to. Ooh, love these. Yes. And yes, feel free to heart each other and kind of interact in the chat as well. Yes, they're happy to discuss what happened the school day. Excellent. Again, some of the things that we hear are really similar to what you've put in the chat, that they feel connected to others, Students feel supported and like they belong when they're not isolated and alone. They have a sense of connection to the classroom and the school. They feel like they have students and other students that know them, sorry, adults and students that know them that they can relate to. And I love the answers that you've been putting in. Yeah, they're happy. They actually want to go to school. So we have a few more questions. Now, this is more around like, well, what happens when things go like conflict shows up and maybe our children even get involved in discipline incidents. So when your student might be involved in a discipline incident, maybe something has happened to them and they've been harmed, or maybe they're actually responsible for causing harm to somebody else. How do you want your child to feel then? Nice. Honest and accountable. Yes, like repair is not only possible, but is integral. It is like needed to be able to move forward. So some of the things that we hear from parents and also honestly from administrators as we're working with them and supporting the work that they're doing with our children in schools, we hear similar things. We want students to feel like they can take accountability for what they've done, but that they don't feel ashamed or they don't get stuck in shame. Like there's an opportunity to learn conflict resolution skills, learn problem solving, learn empathy, but a way to move forward and repair things and even potentially heal the situation. And that like the incident that happened doesn't define them forever. Like it's something that happened, but it doesn't, they can choose to do different things moving forward. Okay, and one more question for you before we jump into some more mindset questions. How do you wish your school supported your child when they're involved in a discipline incident? So we've kind of touched on some of this with maybe supporting them with honesty and accountability or repair, but anything else that comes up for you, how do you wish your school supported your child when they're involved in a discipline incident? I know it's a big question. So, yes, that they would have empathy. Mhm. Yes. Okay, great. That they actually communicate with the parents, let them know, involve parents, that whatever response happens, happens promptly, so that those involved feel support and what they need right away. Super important. Let the students share their thoughts and feelings. Yes. Understand that students' perception is their reality. They are young people and give them space to process and even speak to parents. Love that. Mhm. So again, some of what we hear from others when we ask this question, and again with administrators as well, is that they want students or children to feel like they're still a part of a community, even when they're involved in a discipline incident. They want a chance to come together to talk and fix things and maybe even to come up with a very clear plan and supports to be able to move forward from whatever happened. They want children involved to be connected to caring adults and really for the children themselves or the students themselves to be voicing what they want or need from a situation. So again, totally echoing a lot of what you all have said. Yes, and just uplifting to an older mentor. Wow, yeah, that would be wonderful. And rediscipline, being able to see your child's strengths and how like those can be included as part of the discipline process. Just really appreciate that. Excellent. Okay, so this is what we want in terms of how our students feel in school and even how they feel when conflict shows up and they might be involved in a discipline incident. So we're now going to show a video that gives this overview of restorative justice practices now that we've kind of got our brains going about what we hope our students experienced. And you can think as you see this video, how does some of what we came up with together in answer to those questions, how might those ideas be embodied or show up in the different ways that restorative justice practices are implemented in FCPS? So I'll go ahead and play this video and then we'll continue. Oh, let's see.
In Fairfax County Public Schools, restorative justice practices are used to build community, foster relationships, repair harm caused by conflict, and prevent conflict from occurring in the first place. These restorative practices range from the informal development of an empathetic restorative mindset by staff and students to formal settings which include preventative community building circles, small group interventions, and responsive restorative justice conferences.
The benefits of restorative practices for students are that every student is seen, heard, and valued.
At London Town Elementary School, community building circles were implemented 3 years ago.
We have students now that we're in our third year of doing community building circles that are advocating to have, problem-solving conversations. Students are more comfortable bringing up problems with each other and wanting to have a dialogue with each other. I notice they're advocating for themselves, especially in the classroom.
Tier 2 restorative practices take place in small group intervention settings.
They're from different classrooms, but they share the same problem. And so with those, it's a 9 to 12 week program. So you have to spend the first part building that trust in that circle process, and then getting to the root cause of, why things are happening. And then by the end of that 12 weeks, hopefully we have strategies and ways to help.
Tier 3 restorative practices, known as restorative justice, are facilitator-led sessions that bring together those impacted by wrongdoing to discuss the incident, understand the effects, and agree on how to repair the harm.
Restorative justice is a formal tool that we use when conflict does occur that gives us the opportunity to intervene, to assess and to discuss what happened, the impact of what happened, and what we can do in order to feel like we can move forward and to repair our relationships in our community.
Twain Middle School and Chantilly High School regularly use restorative justice to resolve situations, repair relationships among students, and correct negative behaviors.
One of the most important parts of RJ is the students have an opportunity to talk through that situation and take ownership of their impact on that situation. Almost every time I know the students I've had worked through it, they'll come back and say, oh, this actually ended up really well.
The benefits is giving students a platform to be heard, and students are learning how to manage relationships in a positive way, and they need our help. And especially if a student feels like they could have handled a situation better, or if they feel like they've been mistreated.
It's a way for them to understand how it affects the community as well as how it affects each other, and to figure out a way to come to some sort of agreement on how to move forward. And this is all part of it, learning the empathy, learning accountability, learning reflection.
This is a great way to teach children the skills of how to get along. And once they learn it at this age, they carry it on for the rest of their lives.
Excellence,
equity,
and opportunity.
All right, so hopefully that...
This is one of my favorite little gifts to give.
Sorry, everybody. Okay, YouTube is now closed. Hopefully that helped give an overview of the three main tiers, or the full scope of the RJ program that we have here. And we'll refer back to those tiers throughout our presentation. So I just wanted to quickly highlight that Chris and I, yes, we work out of central office as specialists, but we also have a team of restorative justice facilitators who work out of central office as well. They implement our tier 1 trainings. They give coaching and support to school-based restorative justice certified facilitators. And then they also are the facilitators for our most serious tier 3 restorative justice cases. So perhaps you recognize them from your different school buildings. They're all assigned via region, and pyramid in different ways and directly are supporting and in schools all the time. So now we'll think a little bit about this restorative mindset and what does it mean really to have a restorative mindset. So this is a big quote here, and I'm not going to read all of it out loud because there's a lot here, but it's part of a quote that we share in our Tier 3 facilitation training. The beginning of the quote really addresses like how we define restorative justice and kind of the shift from thinking about justice as just about crime and punishment, but really about meeting the needs of people. The second half of the quote is what I really want us to focus on, that the harder work is establishing a mindset or a paradigm that views all children as valuable and worthy of affirming learning practices. So why I bring that up is because you might be thinking to yourself, well, like, of course, hopefully our educators and even we as parents or as caregivers think that children are valuable and worthy of affirming learning practices. Like, this is not that special. What do you mean this is a restorative mindset? So I think the challenge really comes for how much do we believe this when students, for example, actually cause serious harm to each other? Do we still see them as valuable and worthy of affirming learning practices? Or when a young person has really betrayed the school community or betrayed someone's friendship or trust, a teacher's trust, do we like do what we need to and give those valuable and affirming learning practices, even when a student is multilingual and still learning English, or when they have a disability and still need extra support, or with our really young students, being able to think of creative ways to still give them opportunities to engage in conflict in a way that they can develop skills and learn from it. This is what we mean by embodying a restorative mindset. It's not just sometimes, it's all the time, and it's for all students. And so this is a definition of restorative justice that is one of my favorite definitions. It comes from an organization called Amplify RJ, and they say restorative justice is a philosophy and a set of practices rooted in indigenous teachings. So it comes from traditional cultures, indigenous cultures around the world that emphasize our interconnection by repairing relationships when harm occurs while proactively building and maintaining relationships to prevent future harm. So a lot of times we think about restorative justice just as that response to conflict and harm, repairing relationships piece, but it's also really about building and maintaining relationships and connection and how that can even prevent future harm from taking place. So these are some of our core beliefs and values of restorative justice and education. Our grounding belief is that all people, no matter who they are worthy and are relational. And so because that's a core belief we have these three values that really ground all of the work that we do with students in restorative justice. So that first value is respect, the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes and really see where they're coming from. The value of dignity, that all human beings are born with dignity and that worth can't be substituted, even when they have done something really bad to somebody else or have really made a mistake that harmed someone or the school community. And then the value of mutual concern, that we are connected to each other and what happens to you matters in our community. So I'll go ahead and pass to Chris now.
The very foundation of restorative justice practices focuses on this idea that we do things with people rather than to or for them. That when we come alongside people and do things together, it creates a sense of equality, breaking down hierarchies, whether that's a teacher and a student or a parent to a child, to allow us to relate as fellow human beings. Next slide, please. And as you can see, the idea of doing things with really means that we're doing things in actively, we're doing it in shared responsibility and ownership, we're doing things as partners, and we're doing things because we're building community and we're in it together. If we do things to people, people feel like they're an object, they feel like they're passive, like being acted upon, they're receiving things passively. They don't really feel like they have a choice in the matter. But if we do things for people, and as I'm a parent of a 6-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old son, that if I do things for them, then they don't have to do it themselves. There's almost like a learned helplessness. We take away their power and agency, and they have an missed opportunity to learn and grow. So if I, sometimes at home, for example, when we're doing cleanup, it's better if we're doing things together as a family. We're all cleaning up. So we're doing things with instead of, doing things to or for. So there's real power in restorative justice practices and the idea that we're doing things with. So now we'd like to just take a poll and hear from you based on those 3 values that we described and defined according to restorative justice practices. Which of these values is most important to you and your family? And we've launched the poll, so when you have a chance, just go ahead and let us know between respect, dignity, and mutual concern, which of those values is most important to you and your family. Thank you for all those responses so far, just allowing a little more time. Maybe 10 more seconds before I close the poll. Great, I'm going to share the results. As you can see, amongst people who are participating in our webinar today, it looks like respect and mutual concern really resonated for you and your family. The idea of being able to step into another person's shoes and see their perspective, and the idea that what happens to you affects it. We're all interconnected as fellow human beings. And the idea of mutual concern also focuses on the idea that we care for each other. So it goes 2 ways, between students to student, but also between student to teacher. So it's the idea that teachers care for their students, but also students care for their teachers or their school staff members, and we relate to each other as fellow human beings. So thanks so much for sharing the values that resonated with you and your family. And I believe I'll turn it back to Anna Laura for the next section. Oh, and I just want to transition us back. We're going to now, after we've had a chance to look at restorative justice practices in education as a whole and what restorative justice is, we're now going to dive into what do restorative justice practices look like here in FCPS.
Thanks, Chris. So we wanted to start with the Tier 3 process because this is probably the process that you're most familiar with. You might have received a phone call from an administrator asking if your young person, whatever age they are, wanted to participate in a restorative justice process. So you can think back to the video. The Tier 3 process is when some kind of conflict is taking place between students, and we either need to intervene before an SRNR infraction and a discipline incident actually takes place, or something has already happened. The conflict has come to life and some kind of discipline incident has already happened. And so we can engage restorative justice as part of a discipline process. So the way that the Tier 3 process works is that a conflict takes place or again is brewing, an administrator makes or needs to get parent permission first, and then they can make a referral to either their school-based facilitator or to our central office team. The trained facilitator then meets with all of the people involved in the conflict in something called a pre-conference, where they make sure that everyone has the right mindset and actually even wants to participate in the restorative justice circle and really explains like what the process is, answers questions. And if that goes well and everybody wants to meet and they're ready to come together, then the facilitator leads what we call a restorative justice circle or conference. They mean the same thing. where the facilitator leads this conversation when they're sitting in a circle and talk about what happened, the impact that the situation has had on all of the people involved in the situation, and maybe even on people that aren't in that circle, and then think together about what needs to happen to try to repair the situation and make things as right as possible. Hopefully, and I'll say almost always, these circles end in an agreement where the participants then come up with very specific things that they agree to, they sign it, and then the agreement is followed through by the school. So this is our Tier 3 process. And if you would like to know more about Tier 3 and how it connects to discipline and the SR&R and all of those things, that is really the focus of our webinar on December 19th. So please come back for that. Today, however, we really want to focus on that first blue box on our screen, the practices that are really about building and strengthening relationships and preventing conflict. So what we call Tier 1 and Tier 2. So again, Tier 1 are classroom circles that usually teachers facilitate in their classroom to help build relationship and connection with the whole classroom. They usually last somewhere it's like around 10, 15 minutes or so, and they involve the whole classroom. Tier 2 circles are students from different classrooms who come together because they have some kind of shared experience where they need a little extra support. We typically do circles around attendance issues, tardies, maybe wanting to develop leadership skills with a group of students. And we'll dive into what Tier 2 is in a little bit as well, a little further. And then again, Tier 3 is when there's some kind of conflict or harm that's taken place, as you can see here. So when we talk about making restorative justice accessible to all students, we just wanted to highlight some of the very concrete tools that our facilitators use to help make the process available to everybody. These were developed in partnership with our neurodiversity specialists here in central office. And so there are different like visual tools that we have that help students understand the restorative justice Tier 3 process, or for all of the tiers, be able to help them name and understand how they're feeling, the emotions that they might be feeling, and even like the impact of their actions. So we can see like a chart here in Spanish that our facilitators have to help younger students or multilingual learners be able to identify how they're feeling. The feelings chart that might be more for high school students that has all kinds of feelings listed for them, or even this visual on the right-hand side that depicts visually, again, our Tier 3 process and some of the key questions that we just talked about, but displays it in a visual way. So these are tools that we use, again, because we value all students and want all students to be able to access this. And I'll turn it back to Chris.
So now let's take a look at the restorative practices, that blue box on the left-hand side that Anna Laura spoke about, and how it kind of plays out here in the Fairfax County Public Schools. The definition of restorative practices is it focuses on the proactive building and strengthening of relationships and community using the values and beliefs of restorative justice. So you can see in these three visuals, restorative practices is focused on building community, kind of the circle image where they're all holding hands, but you'll see more in the next slide. The idea of active listening, really listening and speaking from the heart, and the idea of empathy, kind of building empathy, being able to see things from different perspectives between individuals, whether that's between students in the classroom or between students and the teacher and teachers and the students, kind of, again, that mutual concern aspect. And the ways that it kind of plays out with the Tier 1 restorative practices, you can kind of put them into two categories. The first is the way that school staff embody this relationship-centered, restorative, empathetic mindset, just one-on-one with students. You can see in this image, this teacher is getting down on the eye level with the student and just really making eye contact with them, and just being able to kind of listen openly and share with them. And that makes a big difference. So even the way that the posture that we take with our students and how we train our staff can make a big difference to how they feel and experience school and their classrooms. The second way that Tier 1 restorative practices look like here in FCPS is through those community building circles. And Laura mentioned them. They happen weekly in three different kind of settings. If you're in elementary school, they might happen during their morning meeting time. So that time at the beginning of the day, which is set aside for like 10 to 20 minutes, where students are already doing kind of opportunities to connect with each other, but it's kind of done in a more formalized way. And we'll talk more about that. It might just happen during a regular classroom time, whether that's a history class, a PE class, English class, like any type of classroom can do these community building circles. And they can include general community building questions, but also teachers integrate some of their content into their community building circles. And finally, in the middle and high school level, we also have them during advisory time as part of the responsive advisor meeting time. And so maybe once a week, students and teachers and adults build community through a community building circle during advisory time. So we just want you to take a minute here. This is a picture of a community building circle that happened here in FCPS a couple years ago. And actually I visited this classroom and this teacher. And just take a look at this image and go ahead when give yourself a minute. And what do you notice about this structure of the community building circle? And you can go ahead, put in anything that you notice in the chat. What do you notice about how the teacher is sitting with the students? Anything that you notice? Yes, right? Just by the very structure of being sitting together in a circle, they can all see each other. So in classrooms often, sometimes teachers and students sit in rows, right? And they just see the backs of their heads, or they can't really directly talk to each other. So the structure of the circle allows them to really see each other and their body language. Yeah, everyone is engaged, right? We'll talk more about how that happens, but even through their body language, and this was taken a couple years ago, but they're all like listening to, in this case, the adult who's talking in this setting. Anything else that you notice? It's hard to see, but yeah, the adult is sitting, not standing. So right, exactly. They are sitting in the same exact chair as the students. So they don't have a teacher chair. We kind of encourage them unless maybe they have a need for that physically, but to really create that sense of equity. We are all on the same level here together in this community building circle. I am not towering over you. It's kind of a really equitable playing field that we're all as human beings relating to one another. And that even that small thing that you just shared, Lily, makes a big difference. Yep. So maybe in this case, some students might have left and gone, and they might have gone to the bathroom. They might come back, but there's always a space for somebody who may not have been there. In this case, usually sometimes we do invite the teacher just to remove the chairs to be a little bit closer together. But again, there's space for everyone in the circle. Okay, next slide, Anna Laura. So just highlighting some of the things you spoke about in the chat. They're all sitting in a circle. There are no tables or desks in the middle. So oftentimes in our classrooms, we're students are sitting behind their desks, teachers sitting behind their desk, standing in the front of the classroom. All the barriers have been removed, which creates a real openness for everybody to interact. Again, it's facilitated by the trained facilitator. That's the adult in the center of that picture. And what you'll notice, and it's hard to see, what she has in her hands is something called a talking piece. And this is a way that designates who is speaking in the circle. And that talking piece gets the facilitator asks a question and they answer the question first. So in this case, the adult shares first on the question, which demonstrates trust and vulnerability. And the students get to know the teacher as a human being. In this case, then she passes it around the circle and everybody gets a chance to either speak, or one of the guidelines listed on the slide is that they can pass. Oftentimes in schools, teachers call on students when they raise their hand, or they call on students kind of cold call and they have to respond. So in this case, there's a choice. And we encourage that even in passing, listening is participation. And the teacher does come back to somebody who hasn't spoken. Some of the other guidelines listed here are the idea of confidentiality, that whatever we say in the circle stays in the circle, the use of the talking piece, and as I said, we listen and speak from the heart. And I see a question in the chat that says, what if someone breaks confidentiality? In this case, we might even do a topic around in the community building circle is, what is confidentiality? What does it mean to have confidentiality? Does it mean if you break confidentiality? What are some of the impacts of it? So we probably have a group discussion around how important confidentiality is. And the very act of other students speaking about it and how important it is might make that one student or two students who broke the confidentiality think a little bit about it and see this is really something important. And they don't have to be called out in front of the group. And sometimes that helps just restore that confidentiality. By and large, we see students and teachers say that confidentiality is upheld. So what are some examples of community building circle questions? So what are the types of questions that are asked in these different settings? In an elementary morning meeting, restorative justice community building circle, it could be as simple as this check-in question, how are you doing this morning on a scale of 1 to 5? So once again, it's a great opportunity for the teacher to share, actually today was a 2. I had to rush out the door. I was, getting my kids to school, and then somebody threw up. We had to go back, and I was running a little bit late. Just that very act of a teacher sharing that it wasn't such a good day allows the other kids to share, okay, it's okay for me to also have not such a good day. And so kids can share just wherever they're at on the scale. This next example of the middle school shows a teacher who used the curriculum, a book they were reading called The Kite Runner, and the idea of forgiveness was the theme. They used these types of questions and kind of asked them in the round. So on a scale of 1 to 5, how forgiving a person are you? 1, you never hold a grudge. And 5, you do not want to cross me. So they get to hear from each other and the teacher their level of forgiveness. And the questions you can see kind of build on one another, which is harder, forgiving someone else for wrongdoing or forgiving yourself from wrongdoing, and why. And finally, what is the best apology in words or actions you have ever given or received? And then as you can see at the high school level, an advisory circle, you might be looking at, seniors, and they might have a chance to kind of reflect at the end of the year, like of their 4 years in high school. If you had to pick a favorite year of your life, what would you choose and why? What was your favorite thing from childhood? And then looking forward, you're all seniors. What's been your favorite part of high school? These questions, as you can see, are very open-ended, non-judgmental, easy for students to participate and access. And again, highlighting that the teachers also share their own answers to the responses first really helps the kids to build those relationships, that mutual concern between the teacher and the students.
Thanks, Chris. And right. And it just, again, wanted to uplift that, like, even with the English class example, they're able to talk about it even if they didn't read it, honestly. And so they're still able to build connection and get to know each other in a more meaningful way. So we're going to give an example of a few students that are based on real students that we've worked with or that our teachers have worked with. So first we have Mia. She's a first grader. She's sweet but painfully shy. She plays alone during recess and really kind of sits silently during share time. And her teacher even notes that after the first month of school, she doesn't really have any friendships. She's feeling lonely, invisible, is really struggling to develop those social skills. And her teacher's really concerned that her classmates and the teacher are missing out on getting to know who Mia is. And so the teacher implements these tier 1 community building circles in their classroom, asking things like, what's your favorite animal and why? Or what's your favorite thing to do at recess? And through this process where all of the students pass around the talking piece and have to answer, Mia quietly shares that she loves to draw dogs. And then another student, Sam, exclaims, oh my gosh, me too. I love drawing dogs. And that gives them a connection point because the circle created a safe kind of shared space for them to share experiences. And then Sayeb later approaches Mia and they really kind of start to develop a friendship because of that community building circle and connection that they found out about during that circle. So the circle led that connection or created the opportunity for that connection to happen. And then Mia actually starts to feel more included and has a friend after because of the circles as well. Another example might be a young person, a young boy named Ethan, who's in 7th grade. He's also a little quiet. Most of his friends went to a different middle school, so he's having a rough transition to the year. He's really disengaged from classwork and keeps arriving tardy to class, 5-10 minutes late, especially to his English class. He does his assignments, but not totally. They're usually incomplete. And he really just feels disconnected from the school environment. He feels invisible. And his tardies and lack of completion are also really starting to negatively impact his academics. So his teacher also starts implementing community building circles using those like low risk prompts like the first 5 check-in is that picture that Chris showed that had the elevators. It's a really cool website that we share with teachers where they can have quick check-in questions for middle school, elementary school, and high school. So at first, Ethan passes. He just doesn't want to contribute in the community building circles the first few weeks. But after 3 weeks, he starts to feel a little more safe and like a little more like he might want to share. And through sharing small comments, he feels acknowledged and seen. And within 4 weeks, he actually starts arriving to class on time because he doesn't want to miss the circle. He really enjoys it. And via that, he also starts turning in work that's more completed and his grades improve and he feels more connected in his classroom. So actually, I wanted to say with these examples, we just want to bring to life for you how real ways that these circles can impact students. At the same time, we're not saying that restorative justice practices magically fix all problems that students might be having, but we really do see that restorative circles can have a massive positive impact on students who participate. And the next slide is going to show you how.
So as Anna Laura mentioned in that last slide and the slides with those 2 case studies, and our work with joining circles of these tier 1 community building circle classrooms, those shyer students definitely find a voice in the classrooms. In fact, one of the pieces of data we asked students who participate in our restorative school project is, what did you feel or experience from community building circles? And we had one student said, I don't feel invisible anymore. So it benefits all students, but in particular, those students who may feel like they're lost, kind of in the middle, not really a part of things, they really feel a strong connection and really develop their voice. This slide right here shows the impact of community building circles when teachers first do this before they even do their circles as part of the Restorative Schools project, and they're trained to how to do them. They take a survey and look at their classroom communities at the beginning of the year and say, is my sense of community in the classroom, students' abilities to get along with each other and connect with each other, is it poor, fair, good, or excellent? And you can see last year's teachers who participated, less than half of them said that that was a good or excellent kind of category, that their classrooms was a good sense of community in the classroom or excellent sense of community, their ability to get along with each other and connect with each other. At the end of the year, after implementing community building circles, either weekly at the elementary level or bi-weekly at the middle and high school level, since they block scheduling, these teachers then took the same survey at the end of the year, and you can see that the percentage that said their sense of community in the classroom was good or excellent almost went up 2.5 times to 95%. Their ability to get along with each other, every teacher who participated and did the survey said it was good or excellent, and their ability to connect with each other also went up dramatically. So you can see the impact of community building circles on the classroom environment. Then we had last year one middle school in FCPS implemented community building circles school-wide, and they had students experience a circle either in the advisory time or during their content area. So maybe one week, all the math teachers did community building circles. The next week, social studies did it. The next week, the fine arts department did it. So teachers might have done it once every 6 or 7 weeks, but students got to experience the circle every week during the school year. And between the fall and spring, when students take what we call the social emotional learning learner screener survey, which you as parents receive copies of your individual students' outcomes, you can see here in this category of sense of belonging, this school in the spring of 2025 saw all positive increases in the sense of belonging questions. But you can see that the two-starred items, how much support do the adults at your school give you, went up 7 points in terms of the students' responses. They felt much more supported by the adults in their school. And how much respect do students at your school show you went up 5 points. So just the very act of sitting in circle, building those relationships between students and teachers can make a big difference. There's also the category of self-awareness and relationships. And we also saw in this school, every question in this category went up in a positive direction. But looking here, it might be a little hard for you to see. The two questions we highlighted that went up the most were during the past 2 weeks, how well did you get along with students who are different from you? So the idea of, again, learning about each other in circle, learning about those things that might connect you that you might not have known about a student or a classmate, or maybe an adult in the classroom can make a big difference. And finally, during the past 2 weeks, how much were you able to disagree with others without starting an argument? So they were able to have disagreements, but not get into an argument, which, could lead to much more negative things or much more difficult things. And Fairfax County Public School partnered with a national researcher on restorative justice out of UC Berkeley. And we took data from our elementary kids on our screener survey from 2 years ago. And we looked at this one question: how much support do the adults at your school give you? Which we looked in at that middle school level. And we wanted to know, is there a connection, a correlation to the amount of support students receive from their adults at the school and their academic outcomes? Is there a connection, a correlation? And we found, using very rigorous data analysis, that there was a connection. And you'll see in our next slide that for every unit gain, and they answer this question, how much adult support do you feel like the adults give you at your school, from a 1 to 5? For every point they go up, we saw an increase in their reading SOL scores of 1.5% points, 2.1% point in math, and a 1.4 point decrease in discipline referrals, in the sense that the more students felt supported in their classrooms, in their schools, the better academic outcomes that they also were getting, but also the less likely they were going to get a discipline referral and get in trouble. So they felt more included, more sense of belonging, and they were less likely to get in trouble, which is truly amazing when you look at it, this data from our students. And some schools in FCPS, and you can look and see whether your school is a part of this, join what we call the Restorative Schools Project. And the idea is it's a 3-year commitment to train ideally 80 to 90% of their staff in these tier 1 community building circles. And so I train a group of trainers at their school, and then they in turn train their staff. So it really comes from staff members right out of their own school, their peers and colleagues who train them in these circles. And sometimes we train grade levels, let's say like elementary school, like the 5th and 6th grade teams. But we've had 2 schools this year also train their entire staff to do community building circles. Let's say every Friday during morning meeting is when they're doing their community building circle. So if you were to walk into that elementary school, you would see every classroom doing community building circle and every staff member joining one. Or one of our high schools did, they trained all their teachers to do it during advisory time. So again, if you'd walk in to any advisory time on a certain day, you would see community building circles going on. And again, if this is something that is interest to you as a parent and seeing it at your school, and your school isn't on that list, then please talk to your principal and say, I'd love for my school to be a part of the Restorative Schools Project. And we offer information sessions to our principals in the spring, kind of early spring, to gauge their interest and invite them to be part of the project. And yes, how are schools selected? It's an opt-in process. So we kind of give information to all principals about it. and they can come to information sessions. They do need to nominate people who would become teacher trainers, and then I train those teacher trainers. Our staff also trains the teacher trainers, and then they in turn train their staff the next school year. So it's an opt-in process, and we hope that more schools join in as part of the Restorative Schools project. And it really, really works because they have on-site trainers who can then support, coach, mentor, join circles. It really improves that fidelity of implementation and making sure circles happen on that regular basis.
All right, so now we're going to look briefly at our Tier 2 circles and then get to how you can implement some of these practices at home and still have time for some Q&A. I'm just looking at the time and it's rushing by for us. So Tier 2 circles, again, thinking back to the video that we saw at the beginning, are group interventions that are held weekly for the same group of students that have some kind of similar challenges. These groups usually last 9 to 12 weeks, and we use data within the school to help select students that would benefit from this kind of extra support. So some of the key aspects of a Tier 2, they could be called intervention circles, are again, you're sitting in a circle. It's facilitated by a trained facilitator who comes to learn how to do this process. They're still using the talking piece. It's still voluntary. We can't force them to participate in the circle overall or even when they're there on a weekly basis. They meet for 8 to 12 weeks. They're from different classrooms, but have some kind of shared experience. And they spend those first few weeks building connection and then really dive into problem solving and support around whatever that shared experience is that they've been identified for. So for example, here's a 9th grade student named Samuela. She is new to high school as a 9th grader. She really scored low on her SEL screener data. She doesn't feel like she belongs in the school community and like any of the kids in her classes really understand her. She just moved to FCPS last December and had really struggled to make friends at her middle school, and she was even bullied at her old school. Now she's in high school and feels really overwhelmed by the size of the school. And while she started off the year with pretty good grades, her grades are really starting to slip among multiple classes, and her teachers have even noticed that sometimes she hides in the bathroom instead of going to class. She did connect with a school counselor who thought she might be able to benefit from a Tier 2 group with similar students who are having similar experiences. And so that school counselor facilitates the group, spends the first 3 weeks really building stronger connection with the other students who also maybe don't have a strong sense of belonging within the school community. Through this group, she really starts to get to know other students that she has that are in the group, some that she even has classes with, but she didn't know before. And she sees that they actually have a lot in common, even though she didn't think that she did with them at the beginning. Sophia, who's in this group, also happens to be in her English class, invites her to eat lunch with her. They sit next together in English class. Samuela really starts to feel known by the participants in this group over the 12 weeks and by the school counselor. Now she has an adult who she feels like really knows her and really supports her in the school community that she can go to if she has help. And we see on her SEL screener in the spring that her scores really improve and she's starting to enjoy coming to school and is no longer late to class. Another example of Noah, a 3rd grade boy who gets really angry really easily and is constantly getting into fights with other classmates. He feels really isolated because he's gotten into 3 physical altercations so far this year. And now all of those altercations were with 3 different friends. And now they all say they don't want to be friends with him because they don't want to be friends with someone who fights so much. His parents really feel stuck. They don't know how to support Noah. Noah just tells them that all the ideas they have are stupid and useless. And so the teacher recommends Noah for a Tier 2 group around friendship and developing friendship skills. At the beginning, Noah really has a hard time with the guidelines and using the talking piece and turn taking and kind of wants to blurt out the whole time. But through that process and through the facilitator really enforcing the expectations, he really starts to listen to other students as they share their answers and doesn't interrupt them. He starts to secretly love the mindfulness, calming moment that the facilitator does at the beginning of the session, at the beginning of the circle, where they all have to take a big breath together and do a mindfulness exercise, and really notices that he starts to feel more calm afterwards. So in the group, he discusses what makes a trustworthy friend. How can we become a better and more trustworthy friend? And really hears ideas from other people that are in other kids his age about what that means, and not just from an adult who's telling him what it means to be a good friend or what it means to be trustworthy. He now has a group of students who know him not as angry Noah, but for really who he is on the inside. So we saw some of these in the examples that we just gave, but we offer tier 2 circles right now. We have defined curriculums on building friendship skills, on building a sense of belonging, and then young people who really struggle with attendance or with tardies. So these are curriculums that we offer to those who come to our trainings, but trained facilitators can also develop their own curriculums to meet the needs of whatever student bodies or student groups that they're seeing that really could benefit from this type of circle process. And so just wanted to give a quick snapshot too of a tier 2 attendance circle from an elementary school. This was actually implemented and is actually being implemented with elementary school students. So you can see here, they've spent the first 3 weeks really getting to know each other, and then they start diving into school, what strategies, and you can see bolded on that first line, what strategies you can use to make coming to school better, how to get through hard parts of the day in week 4. Talking about just waking up and getting ready. Not all of our students, or many of our students, have to do this on their own, and they don't always do it in the best way. So sharing ideas, like, do they wake up with an alarm? Is it an adult that wakes them up? What works for them in terms of their morning routine? And then at the end, even knowing that attendance is really important, what are some concrete goals and commitments they can make to each other to have good attendance the rest of the year? So from students who have actually participated in tier 2 circles, we've heard them say that they felt like they really developed different skills around communication, seeing that other students have the same problem. There are people like them. They're not alone. They're not the only ones facing a certain problem in the school, which is so supportive to the students who participate. And again, tier 2 circles can exist in elementary school, middle school, and high school. And so you can just think to yourself and feel free to add answers into the chat. What are some other experiences, shared experiences, where you think bringing together a group of students might be really supportive to them? If you'd like to share your answers in the chat, please go ahead. Some of what we've been thinking about that we've heard from teachers and even tier 2 facilitators in our schools are making tier 2 groups for developing conflict resolution skills for students who really need extra support with that, or even having tier 2 groups for students who are new to the USA, or who are multilingual learners who just need extra support with understanding the school system. So those are some ideas of other groups of students we might bring together. Twice exceptional kids might be right in their experiences and kind of how they might be feeling in the school community. Excellent. Okay, so now I'll pass to Chris for how we can do some of these practices at home.
Now we wanted to share with you an easy way to do a circle at home with your family. And as somebody who has a 6-year-old son, a 6-year-old daughter, 3-year-old son, and my 85-year-old mother, we actually do this practice at home. So all you need to do this practice is something called a talking piece. And as you can see from this slide, it can be as simple as, let's say you have a fidget or a pop-it at home. You can use that. A stress ball, a stuffed animal. It can be something like a baseball. Let's say one of your children plays baseball, a basketball, a football, cheer pom-poms. whatever it might be. You can even ask your children to choose a talking piece. That's probably the best idea, is that we just have our children. I just asked my daughter, pick something as a talking piece, and it can be whatever you have on your table to be able to use to designate who is speaking. And then what you do is, as you can see from here, is you ask a question and you use that talking piece to designate who is speaking, and you go around in a circle around the table to make sure that everybody gets a chance to speak. And just like our tier one community building circles and tier two and tier three, people always have the option to pass. Maybe you can't think of your answer to the question, and that's okay. You can come back and answer after you've heard some other people share. So some of the questions you could ask during a mealtime might be, what's your rosebud thorn for today? So a good thing from today, not something that you're really excited about, and something that's been a challenge. Maybe something we do like to do at our house. What was the high, low, and buffalo? Once again, the best part, the most challenging part, and just a completely random or funny thing that happened. My wife and I do that at night just to check in with each other and develop that connection. Maybe it's a gratitude check in. One thing I appreciate about someone at this table today is sometimes we just say, what is one thing you're thankful for today? And even that just creates some great connection and community. You can see some other questions listed there. For example, last night when we did this at the dinner table, we just used a block as the talking piece. My 3-year-old son actually came up with the first prompt. He said, what is your favorite toy? And so everybody shared what their favorite toy was. And even as adults, and my 85-year-old mom also shared what her favorite toy was when she was a kid. So the kids get to see you as adults like answer those questions and answer the responses as if we were kids as well, or just as regular human beings. And it's a great practice. And it does take practice. And, not always really the focus is making sure that whoever is speaking is the person that is talking piece, and we're going to listen to them, and making sure you go around in that circle is the main thing. And it does take practice to make sure you over and over again. The first time, don't worry, it'll be messy. Some people, the kids might, talk over each other, but just to remind them, whoever has that talking piece is the person speaking. And it really allows them to feel like they're being listened to and heard. And you also get a chance to share. And again, you can have your kids develop the questions, come with the questions, and you can take turns also coming up with those questions. And you can also use this for planning and decision making. Let's say, you have to figure out what's something that everybody, if you could create your perfect Saturday, what would be the first thing that you want to do? Like Saturday's coming up and we have an open day. What would you like to do? And that allows everybody to share kind of something that they want to do. And you can kind of build in everybody's feedback to make the Saturday go great. As you can see, there's lots of different opportunities, these questions, which we will send out in the slide deck, that you can use around planning and decision making. I'll highlight one more, might be, what is the most important feeling we want to carry throughout this holiday season? Like as things get really busy, if you celebrate a holiday during the winter season, what's something of value or something that we want to make sure, like, my wife and I would probably say we want to make sure we have like fun and memorable experiences, that we're having a good time and doing things that will create memories for a long time. So think about trying that at home with your family, your roommates, whoever it is. Just grab a talking piece, ask a question, pass it around the circle, and just try to do it on a regular basis. And you'd be surprised the connections and community that are built in your home.
All right. And so very quickly, as we kind of start to end our presentation time, we just wanted to address some of the common questions about restorative justice practices that we get. Hopefully, we've actually answered most of them throughout the webinar, but we just wanted to highlight a few of them. So my child is shy. Will they be forced to speak? No. Our process is voluntary, so they can always pass. Our community building circles use an advisory or homeroom. They might be if the teacher's choosing to use the community building process, but they might also be used in subject, in content classes like math, English, science. How do these practices relate to FCPS's strategic plan and priorities for the district? All of these practices that we've talked to connect directly to goal 2 of the strategic plan, which is all about making students feel safe, supported, included, and empowered at school. And you can see how all of these practices really do help that goal come to life for our students. Is this just another word for feelings time? Why do teachers need to spend all this time in circles when they should be, really teaching math or history? We shared the data that we have from our elementary school students that this support helps students feel connected, a sense of belonging. It ties to their coming to class on time. And from the study that we did, it actually ties directly to their SOL scores. And so there's a huge connection between these practices and academics as well. How can I use the talking piece at home, like Chris was suggesting, without it feeling forced or awkward? It might feel a little awkward at first because you're trying something new, and that's okay. And just want to highlight what Chris shared. It's through the routine of doing it over and over and really trying, for a while to see if this works, that you'll get buy-in, we think, just like we see with kids in our classrooms. They're not sure about the process at first. It's something new and different. And with over time, they really do start to open up and enjoy the process. And are these the circles that are used to solve conflicts that happen during the day? No. Those are tier 3 circles. So these are circles, the ones that we've been talking about, tier 1 and tier 2, that are proactively building connection and relationships. Tier 3 conflict circles are their whole other own thing that we've touched on a little today, but our next webinar will really dive into. Okay, so a couple few things that you can do next as folks who have participated, and then we'll take some of your questions. If you are interested in what we've talked about today, talk to your teachers about using Tier 1 community building circles in their classrooms. Advocate, like Chris was saying, with school principals for your school to even join the Restorative Schools Project and implement these practices whole school. Ask if your young person has some kind of difficult time or might really need to develop a skill set, or just would benefit from extra connection in that tier 2 circle might be really helpful for them. Talk to your teachers, talk to the school counselors about implementing a tier 2 circle for shared experiences. While we haven't really touched on tier 3 that much today, when your young people are involved in some kind of discipline process, encourage the use of tier 3 restorative justice, maybe before something happens, when a conflict is just brewing, and really, or when they are involved in a discipline incident. Try to encourage this restorative mindset with your families and within your communities. Maybe try using that talking piece at home with some of the restorative justice questions or community building questions we offered. Come to our next webinar on December 19th to find out all about Tier 3 and discipline. And then, of course, we have our contact information here. And so if you have any questions or would like to follow up with us in any way, then you can always reach out to us individually as well. So I think we'll now transition to some Q&A. And so, Nadia, should I pass it to you? Great.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. What a great presentation. Great that you guys reminded everyone that session 2 or your part 2 is on December 19th, and hopefully you can pass the word and we can get more people to come live. However, everyone's going to get the recording. So if there's any questions, please make sure you put them in the Q&A. And we do have one. The first question says, if our school has not joined the project and we ask for tier 2 help, who would run the circle if the school has not been trained?
Chris, you want to take this one?
Sure. In this case, we would, if you make that request, then they would come to us and we can train the school staff to train the circles. And as Anna Laura mentioned, we have a central office team and they could collaborate in partnership with the school staff so that oftentimes counselors, social workers, some classroom teachers run the tier 2 circles. So we can definitely kind of train up the school staff. If you express that interest, we're totally available to collaborate with schools to be able to get them trained. The best tier 2 circles that we see are those that are co-facilitated, which means that there are 2 facilitators who are trained to support the students in that setting.
Thank you. We also have one in the chat that says, if in pre-conference, are every parent and child involved in a tier 3 in the room at the same time?
Great question. The answer is during pre-conference, no. Pre-conferences are done privately. Depending on the situation, if a parent wants to be at the final conference, at the final RJ circle, then the parent would be pre-conferenced as well. Those meetings, sometimes parents and students meet together with the facilitator, but they meet together privately with the facilitator. Sometimes the facilitator, especially if the parent says, I don't need to be at the final conference, I just want my child to engage in this process and for them to kind of do this on their own, then the facilitator will meet one-on-one with each of the children or the students involved in the process. They come all together at the end, but not during pre-conference. That's really, we want that to be a private time.
Thank you. Any other questions from the participants? We have, I am a family liaison in elementary school. If my school wishes to participate in the project, can I get the information of who I will need to connect with?
Yeah, so I would be your point person. I can definitely put that information in the chat. Once again, you can email me and I can provide that information to your principal to share that information. Oh, yep. And actually just missing an S in there. And Laura will put it.
Sorry, Chris.
No problem.
Any other questions? Thank you for sending that email. We have also placed our feedback survey, please, for the participants for you guys to complete. We take that information and try to make corrections or do better if we need to. So thank you so much. We have another poll here for you guys. Since we don't have any questions, if you want to please go ahead and answer.
And we just want to check back in with you. Basically, you answered these same questions at the start of our webinar, and now we are closing our time together. So after listening and participating, if you could share your responses to how much knowledge do you feel like you have about what restorative justice practices are now, about what's available in FCPS, and then what about implementing circles at home as well? Well, thank you so much to all of you who are responding there. And Chris, I'm actually going to try to save this to maybe take some screenshots so that we can see the difference between the beginning and the end.
Right. I was going to say, even myself looking from the first one to now, like even I went a category higher than I was before in the other one. So very, very good information, extremely well presented. You guys have done fantastic and can't wait for our next session and have all of you here again and send this to schools and send all this wonderful collection of information. So with that,